Before I started making this travel content, I was a self-improvement YouTuber. I made primarily self-improvement content for young men ages 18 to 24, just like myself, who hated seeing wasted potential. That is the primary reason why I chose to run a self-improvement YouTube channel. Was I did not like seeing wasted potential in myself and in others. Bearing that in mind, it's no wonder why I feel very negatively about the United States of America. You see, the reason why I'm so hard on the US is not because I think it's a bad country. No. The reason why I'm hard on the US is because I think it has the potential to be the best country, to be the greatest country. But instead of fulfilling that potential, instead of actualizing that potential, it simply wastes that potential. It lives off of a reputation that is no longer true in day-to-day life. And in this video, I want to talk about some of the things that I think the US can improve upon if it wants to maximize and actualize its potential to become the best country on the planet Earth. That said, the first thing that I think the US can improve upon if it wants to become the greatest country is polarization. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you've never been to the US, or you've never lived in the US, or even followed American media, especially as it pertains to politics, let me just break it down for you. The US is the land of polarization. There's no such thing as the middle anymore. You're either on the left, you're on the right. You're liberal, you're conservative. There's no in between. Because being a, I guess, centralist, whatever you would call it, I don't even know the word for it because it doesn't really exist anymore. But being in the middle is actively discouraged because oftentimes people on either end of the political spectrum see that as being to the detriment of their side. So you can't be in the middle because everyone's gonna hate you. Everyone's gonna hate you, and furthermore, you'll never really be able to gain any significant traction in terms of creating or facilitating any sort of movement for change. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that people here in the US care more about being right than they care about making the country and the world at large a better place. Because let's face it, America is probably the most influential country on the planet, to an extent, of course, to an extent, because obviously, having spent 14 months in Europe, I now see that, hey, the rest of the world isn't necessarily as chaotic as the US. But with some of the things that are happening in the US, Europe is being affected as well. Europe is being affected, and it will continue to be affected unless the US can learn from its mistakes and begin to actually create change. But for as long as people are actively engaging in this mindset of polarization and pride and just wanting to be right, and furthermore wanting to show that other people are wrong, nothing's really going to change. Nothing's going to change other than people's levels of personal satisfaction in knowing that they've quote-unquote won. There's no winning. If you're winning, if there are winners and losers, truthfully, everybody's losing because you're not making progress. And I think that, at least for the duration of my time on Earth, that has been the story of America. And I hope to help play a part in changing the chapters to come with videos like this. But I don't know, there's so much momentum going on with the polarization mindset that I just don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible to unwind that momentum and actually begin creating real, true, positive change. I hope that I'm wrong about that. I really hope that I am wrong about that, because again, if the US can't get its shit together, then it's only a matter of time before the rest of the world begins to descend into chaos as well. The next thing that I think the US can definitely improve upon when it comes to just being a better country, full of better people, is it can stop putting fear at the forefront of people's psyches. So again, people here are very polarized, but the reason why they're polarized, the reason why they're acting in such an aggressive manner, politically especially, is because they're in fear. It's because the media companies, who are probably all in cahoots with one another, if we're being honest, but hey, I'm trying to live a long life, so let me not even get into that. But these media companies see that people are polarized, and in order to keep them in that state of emotional vulnerability, they continue to produce articles, headlines, videos, such and such, that cultivate fear within the hearts of American people. And when people are in a state of fear, they act very irrationally. They overcompensate. And they overcompensate by polarizing, by leaning heavily to one side or the other. I'm a conservative. No, I'm a liberal. It doesn't matter. You're still in fear. And for what it's worth, I'm apolitical. But again, that's not really encouraged here in the US. It's not encouraged to be an independent thinker. Ironically, because this is supposed to be the country of individuality. But when it comes to politics, that is most certainly not the case. They want to keep you in fear because fear sells. Fear sells. Take it from me, okay? I'm a content creator. I've been creating content for the past 5 years. And while I myself have actively tried to avoid utilizing these tactics throughout the years because I don't really see them as ethical, I've seen many people who have taken these exact tactics and have made literal millions, literal fortunes, generational wealth by just implementing them, especially in the self-improvement space. There were people who would come in, try to create as much fear in the hearts of their viewers as possible. And I think I'm walking toward a major street, so we're gonna go back this way, but they would actively cultivate this fear, feed into it, and pour gasoline on that fire, and they would polarize people. And it works. It's a damn good method because it really plays into human psychology. Humans tend to be tribalistic in nature, and humans tend to be very fearful. If you think about it, fear is ultimately what creates the conditions for change, for growth, is a healthy level of fear, for survival even. You think about biologically where we come from. I know not everybody believes in evolution, but just from a common sense standpoint, the reason why I look before I cross the street is because I have a healthy fear of getting hit by a car. The problem is when you take that natural psychological state, which is meant to benefit us and keep us safe, and you exploit it for your own personal gain. That's where it becomes a problem. And again, I've seen this at the micro level with content creation, and I've seen this at the macro level with media companies, especially the ones who talk about politics. They are not here to inform you. They are not here to educate you. They are here to trap you. They are here to polarize you, and they're here to profit off of you. And I think that for as long as that's the case, for as long as people buy into this fear, allow these companies to create fear within their hearts about different policies that are being passed and things like that. And again, there's a difference between fear and awareness. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be aware of these things, but if you allow these headlines to create fear within you and you start hoarding things, oh man, I need to start preparing for war. If you start thinking like that, then hey, I don't know of a less brutally honest way to tell you this, but you're the problem. You are the problem because you are incentivizing them to continue doing what they're doing. Now, the next thing that I think the US can improve upon if it wants to truly become the greatest nation on this planet is consumerism, and just incentivizing consumerism from a psychological standpoint. So from having done self-improvement, what I've realized is that the thing that drives people the most, maybe even more so than fear, if not just as much as fear, is the perceived reward of increased social status. So people will move mountains to ensure that they can increase their social status so that people will hold them in higher regard within society, so that they can be on a higher step on this proverbial ladder, so that they can get ahead in the rat race. They will move mountains to make sure that that happens. And I'm not here to suggest that you need to turn off this aspect of your psyche, because I don't think that's possible. I think that we as humans are social creatures, and we're always going to want the approval and validation of other people. Doesn't matter where you're from, what cultural background you come from, and I'll explain what I mean here in a second. But what we do need to do is we need to take this component of our psyches and we need to utilize it to our benefit. We need to utilize it in such a way that it actually benefits us overall. And what do I mean by that? Well, in the Netherlands, for example, one thing that I realized very early on during my stay there actually was that you don't get social status, you don't receive that social and societal reward for indulging in materialistic things. Having the nicest car, the nicest house, the biggest house, or the most expensive clothing, that doesn't garner status out there. In fact, it almost does the opposite. People look down upon you. Now, I think a big part of the reason why this is because it's seen as wasteful, and Europeans, Dutch people included, typically have a more collectivist mindset. So they're thinking in terms of the overall ramifications of that degree of consumerism. They say, hey, you have this big house and you only have 3 people living in it. That's wasteful. That's not something to be proud of. They see things in a much different light. And I'm not saying that Americans need to adopt the exact same mindset that Dutch people or Europeans have, but what I am saying is that I think we would benefit greatly as a nation. And look, I'm not running for president or anything like that. You know, it sounds like I'm giving some sort of presidential campaign speech. Look, I'm just a 25-year-old trying to figure this thing out like everybody else. Because I've seen the other side now and I realize things could be a lot better than they are. But anyways, if Americans could simply take this part of their psyche that desires human, societal, social validation more than anything else on this planet, if they could take that part of their psyches and change the reward system, change the perceived reward, that would alter everything. So you have to think about it. America is a nation of 300 million plus people. If instead of trying to compete with one another, everyone simply decided to collaborate with one another, and especially with the level of not only talent that we have here, but the institutions that we have to cultivate this talent, to hone this talent, you cannot tell me that America could not advance beyond any other country on this planet. You can't tell me that. But because we're a divided nation, because people want to pick sides and compete rather than collaborate, because everybody's trying to one-up the next man and keep up with the Joneses, it just doesn't happen that way. America doesn't get to benefit from all of the resources it has at its disposal. It's not using them in a very effective way. I remember when I was doing the self-improvement content, some of those people who made videos in the same space as me saw me as a competitor, and I never understood that. I could not for the life of me understand why they would want to compete with me when the ultimate goal was to help people out. And I think that said a lot more about them than it did about me. And even if their numbers surpassed mine, I mean, if their intentions weren't pure, then were they really people who were worth looking up to? I don't know. I just know that me personally, I always saw them as potential collaborators. I saw them as people that I should try to merge my insights with in order to serve the greatest good of the people. It just makes the most sense to me. And I think that at the macro level, if America simply adopted this mentality instead of adopting the other mentality of dominate, be the best. And again, I've been saying be the best country, but maybe a better way of putting that is be the best version of America that it can possibly be. I think that if America adopted that mentality and let go of the tribalistic ways, or maybe just saw America itself as the tribe, or saw humanity itself as the tribe, I think that we would see an evolution, a rapid evolution, unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of this planet. But that's just me. Again, maybe I'm just this nut job contrarian who is a bit too idealistic about the world. Or maybe I'm onto something. Consumerism is not the way to go. I know people think that consumerism is what drives the economy and all of that, but listen, there are a lot of people who are millionaires, and there are a lot of people who have made millions and lost it all because of their consumeristic habits. That's not to say that doesn't happen in other countries, but I will say that it's embedded within the fabric of certain European societies, particularly Dutch society. That's the one I'm the most informed about. It's embedded within the cultural fabric to not necessarily avoid consumerism. They are the ones who invented capitalism at the end of the day. Not necessarily avoid consumerism, but practice it in moderation, not overindulge in it for the sake of one-upping the next man and competing with the people that you should be collaborating with. Now, the next thing that I think, and this is probably going to be the most controversial one, but the next thing that I think America could improve upon if it wants to become the best version of itself as a nation is it can stop being so backwards. What do I mean by backwards? What I'm about to say is going to sound very politically charged, but it shouldn't, because this isn't an issue of politics. This is an issue of not just human rights, but common sense. When we talk about things like abortion rights, when we talk about things like gay marriage, it's like, what are we really talking about? Why are we having these discussions? Why are we having discussions about these topics that clearly Europe, at least as far as I'm aware, has figured out many, many years ago? If people want to get abortions, let them get abortions. If people want to get married and they're the same gender, let them get married. It has nothing to do with you. I never understood that. What does gay marriage actually do to society? What negative impact does it have? Even if you're fundamentally against same-sex marriage or whatever, if you're fundamentally against people of the same gender coming together, whether they're married or not, it doesn't matter. They're still together. So I don't know. I don't understand that. It never logically made sense to me. And then abortion rights, it's like, okay, listen. If you have teenagers having unexpected pregnancies, or even people who are being raped, being molested, and they can't rid themselves of, and I don't want to say rid themselves, but they can't let go of the consequences of something that they never asked for, if they have to deal with the consequences of them being victimized by somebody else. I mean, how can a nation that allows that to happen, not just allows it, but encourages it to happen, how can that be the greatest nation on the planet? I don't know. Again, maybe I'm just a nut job contrarian, but when I look at this American flag right here, flying in this person's front lawn, I have to ask myself, what does that flag really stand for? What does that flag really, truly stand for? It's my understanding that it's supposed to stand for freedom. That's my understanding of it. But based on the things that I just said, this isn't the land of the free, this is the land of the me.